Hi everyone, my name is Marissa Cardwell. I'm a registered dietitian and personal trainer. I want to thank everyone who is on and watching today, and I also want to thank the Jewish Community Center and the ECC for continuing to have this class today. We were planning on having it in person, and I hope to have more in-person classes in the future, but I'm glad that we're able to still have this. I've worked at the JCC since 2005, and you may have remembered me from back then. I was a lifeguard and a swim teacher, and I was there all the time. I now have two young kids myself. I have a 6-year-old and a 3-year-old about to turn 7 and 4. And so a lot of what we're going to talk about, I've on the front lines, I'm in the trenches with you guys as I am working on feeding my two kids. The agenda for today is we're going to talk about how to build a balanced plate, how to provide balanced plates for your family, and tips and tricks for nutritious meal times, as well as healthy meal and snack ideas. So you can learn more about me. My handle for social media is @allofnutrition, and my website is www.allofnutrition.com. And I have a lot of child nutrition tips, just healthy eating in general, exercise. If you want to message me either during this Facebook Live as we're talking or afterwards with any questions, I would love to help you guys out. As we go through this class today, a lot of the materials that I'm using is from two websites. It's www.kidseatright.org and letsmove.gov. These are great resources, and if you're wanting to learn more, I think these two websites are legitimate sources for great information. All of it is research-based, and you just want to make sure that we're doing the best for our kids, and these have a lot of great handouts and tips as well. So let's start first about looking at like the USDA food patterns. As I went through and did this, I calculated this based on a boy at age 5. And so girls and boys at this age are roughly about the same for their nutrition needs. And as they're younger, it's going to be a little less. As they get older, it's a little more. But I thought I would pick age 5 as kind of a general idea of what someone this age should be eating. So a boy age 5 or a girl age 5 should be eating about 1,400 calories. So if you ever feel like your kids are eating pretty close to what you're eating, that's because they need about 1,400 calories per day, and more if they're doing a lot of sports and activities. Of those 1,400 calories, they need to be eating about 1.5 cups of fruit, 1.5 cups of vegetables. And of that 1.5 cups, think about this spread throughout the week. If they're eating a cup and a half of vegetables every day, they want to have at least 1 cup of dark green veggies per week, 3 cups of red or orange vegetables per week, a half a cup of legumes per week, and 3.5 cups of starchy vegetables per week. And starchy are like potatoes, sweet potatoes, corn, peas, yams, legumes, beans and chickpeas, and then 2.5 of other, and that's kind of a breakdown of all of those vegetables throughout the week. We also want to have about 5 ounces of grains per day, and of that 5 ounces, we want about 1/2 to be whole grains or more. And an ounce equivalent looks like a piece of bread. So 5-ounce equivalents could look like 2 pieces of bread and a half a cup of rice and some cereal, so spread throughout the day. We also want to make sure that they're getting 4 ounces of protein, and that could be seafood, meat, poultry, eggs, nuts, soy, and then 2.5 cups of dairy in the day, and then at least 12 grams of oils and fats, and preferably they're healthy oils like avocados and olive oils. So if you think about that, because that seems really complicated, when I look at that list and when I give that list to parents, it kind of gets a little overwhelming with all of these breakdowns. Have 1.5 cups fruit, 1.5 cups vegetables. How I like to break it down is, imagine if you have a plate and you break that plate into fourths. You want your kids to have a fist of fruit, a fist of vegetable, a fist of grains, and a fist of protein, and a cup of milk. Okay, so if you think about how that breaks down, and breakfast might be different, but let's look at lunch and dinner. If they're getting a fist of fruit, that's going to be about a half a cup. And so if they're getting a fist of fruit for breakfast, lunch, and dinner, that's 1.5 cups of fruit throughout the day. If they're getting maybe a little bit bigger of a fist for lunch and dinner with vegetables, or they could even do lunch and dinner with a fist of vegetable and maybe a snack with a fist of vegetables, then they're at 1.5 cups of vegetables for the day. If they're doing a fist of grain 3 times a day or more, then they should be getting to that 5 ounces of grains. And then if they are doing the protein, fist of protein, they should be getting close to that 4-ounce equivalents of protein. And then three servings of dairy per day, should get you close to 2.5 cups of dairy. And then we don't have fats on there specifically, but I like to tell parents, let's make sure that you're using healthy fats throughout the meal, because that makes your meal taste good. And when your meal tastes good, your kids are more likely to eat it, and so are we long term. And so we want to make sure that we're getting, a wide variety of fruits and vegetables throughout the day. If you guys have any questions, feel free to type it in to the chat box here, and I'll try to answer them as I go along. And so we've talked about the plate. That's kind of how I like to structure my meals and snacks as I'm planning things. Let's talk about how to do dinners for weeknights. I know it's a little bit different now with everyone home, but the principles are still the same. I know that it's so tough to do dinner times, and we're all busy with work and school schedules and games and lessons and homework, and there's just a lot to do at night. And I think it's really easy, and I see it in my practice, where we slip into these habits of going to the fast food or microwaving everything because we're busy, and it's hard to fit meal times in. I find that bringing balance back into busy evenings with dinners are well worth it, in terms of as a time to connect with our children and their mental health, and also just our nutrition long term, even though it might take a little bit longer and maybe some more effort to plan and have these nutritious meals. I find that there's a long-term benefit to that in our health. And so, but I know that it can't be perfect, and I do not want, as we talk about this, to feel like you can't ever go out to eat, or you can't ever, feed your kids fast food, because there is a time and a place for that. But think if most of your meals can be at home, or at least, planned and balanced, then we're going to be doing better off. And your whole family will feel better when they're eating delicious, nutritious meals together. And so let's talk about how to do this. So what I like to do, and I'm just going to talk a little bit about what I like to do, and then from there we could talk about, how to make this apply for you. I find that as a busy single mom, that if I do not plan my meals up front throughout the week, that I would be completely stressed out, and I would rely on fast food too. So what I like to do, and I do this on the weekends because that's when I have time, but I make a list of the days of the week that we're going to be home and having dinner, and I plan out my menu, and I keep that plate in mind that I mentioned earlier. I keep that plate in mind as I'm creating my menu items, so that I make sure that I have each of those categories. And I create my menu, and then from there I make my shopping list, and then I go grocery shopping. And I have a policy where I only go grocery shopping once a week, because that's about all I have time to do. And so I'll go grocery shopping, get all of my food, and when I get home, if there's anything that can be pre-prepped, I'd like to chop up veggies. I make my veggie tray. I try to always have a fresh veggie tray in my fridge. I have a plastic container with the lid, and usually I put a dip and veggies. And that's just a really easy snack to have in the fridge. If we get home and we're hungry and we want to, everyone's waiting to have dinner, I'll pull out that veggie tray, and we might snack on some veggies as I'm preparing dinner. When I'm creating my menu items, I try to think of those nights of the week and what I have time for. And if I have more time one night, then I'll prepare if I want to do a more labor-intensive meal that night. But if it's a short night, if it's, I know I'm going to work late that night, then we'll do easier prepared meals. I also like to do batch cooking when possible. And so if you have time over the weekend to wash and cut your fruits and vegetables, have those ready. If you can, prepare multiple batches of the main ingredient, and that could be defrosting and cooking up all of your ground beef, and then it's ready, and you can freeze that or have it in the fridge, and it's ready to throw in tacos and casseroles, because that's a big part of, I find that's a big part of the cooking process, is just getting things out of the freezer and defrosting it and then cooking it. So if a lot of that can be done beforehand, then it's ready to go on a night. If you can get your chicken out and have it sliced and marinated, then it's ready to, throw in a wok and throw some frozen vegetables in there and have some rice cooking, and you've got a stir fry on a busy night. I also find that it's helpful if you can have staples on hand in your house, and this is particularly important now as we're going through this time of being at home more and focusing on these staple foods. So having rice, beans, pasta on hand, as well as frozen and canned fruits and vegetables, and try to pick the ones with little or no added salt and sugars. If you turned the label on the back and look at the ingredients, hopefully you're seeing, minimal salt, minimal sugar, or none at all. And if it's a canned fruit, if you can get one that's canned in its own juices, I think that's more ideal than one that's canned in heavy syrup. Let's see, I got a question. My problem is the toddler loves her fruits and veggies and will eat them first and then refuse her protein source, usually meat and any but butters. She enjoys her beans and dairy products. Oh, great question. So let's see, she's a petite child and worries me that she's not getting enough nutrients. So with children like this, and I like to encourage, it's called power packing. If they love fruits and vegetables, that's awesome. Would it work with her to do like a fruit and vegetable smoothie where you can add protein powder, or you could even add a little bit of coconut oil if they're not getting enough fats? And it doesn't have to be coconut oil, that's just an easy one. I like to power pack, so whatever they will eat. If you find that your kids are picky or they're in food jags, I like to either hide things in what they will eat, or try to get them to do a smoothie and add all of those things and pack it in there. Does that help answer your question? And we could talk more about that, because that is a great question, and I know that's a concern for many parents. So we talked about preparing multiple batches. I try to do that whenever possible and have it either in the freezer or the fridge and have it ready to go. Another thing that I do, and I want to share this, is I plan a really easy, I call it my I have one night a week where I plan to do my veggie tray, tomato soup, and cheese sandwiches. I know there's going to be one night every week where I get home later from work, it's a disaster of a day, and I need to have something quick and easy to go. And so for me, my children love tomato soup and cheese sandwich, and it's actually one of their favorite meals every week. But I have that on hand, and I put it doesn't matter what night of the week it is, but I plan for one night every week where it's tomato soup and cheese sandwiches, and we can move things around as needed. Another question, what about good fats for children? I encourage healthy fats like high quality olive oil. You can use coconut oil, you can use avocados, avocado oil, nuts, nut butter, seeds. Those are great fats. I think there's so many fun nut butters and seeds out there that you could use. I like to use chia and flax seeds. There's a lot of options. Does that help answer your question? And it's about letting kids try a variety of things. And fish, let's talk about fish. I think fish is another source of great fats for children. And so if you can, what's encouraged is having fish at least 2 times a week. And that could be tuna sandwiches one day, and it could be shrimp or salmon for a meal on another night. Another tip that I always like to encourage is getting the whole family involved. It's amazing, even little kids can be involved with the cooking. And I find that they're more likely to try fun and new ingredients and meals that they haven't tried before if they are helping. And so they can choose the fruit for dessert. They can mix pre-cut vegetables into a salad. They can even, as they get older, we can let them cut and help prepare more of these meals. I also like to encourage that kids are the ones that are setting the table and clearing off the table, because even they can be helpful, and that it doesn't all need to be on one person to prepare these meals. And I think getting them to help gives them more ownership of the meal process. So let's talk more about the plate. So as you make half your plate fruits and vegetables, what I like to encourage is that we make our plates colorful. And I know the kids are learning about this at school, but they're hearing eat the rainbow, eat the rainbow. As we are the ones planning the meals, we just want to think, are they getting all of those different meal subgroups every day? Are they getting the reds, yellows, oranges, purples, whites, greens? We want to make sure that they're getting all of those different colors, because every color, it has a different different phytochemicals and different micronutrients associated with them. And so we want to have a wide variety of colors with their fruits and vegetables. I think it's really easy as a parent to get in these ruts ourselves where we're just eating the same vegetables same vegetables and fruit. And so what I like to encourage is, take a little bit of time when you can to go through the produce aisle and explore the different kinds of fruits and vegetables that we have in the produce aisle. And like, oh, let's try that one. Let's figure out how to do it. And then take it home and look it up and figure out maybe a new way to eat either a fruit and vegetable that you are cooking in a different way, or finding a fruit and vegetable that you haven't cooked before. I like using, back when Bountiful Baskets was around more, it was fun. They always sent one mystery item, and I would have to, one, figure out what this mystery item was, and then two, figure out how to cook it. And that was kind of a fun way to try a different fruit or vegetable every week. And I know there's lots of other services out there that do that. We want to make sure that with that plate, so we've got our fruit, a vegetable. We want to make sure that we're adding a lean protein when possible. And with that, try to do seafood as a protein at least twice a week, and include whole grains. And when you look at the label, you want to be looking for the ingredient list, that the first ingredient or the second ingredient says 100% whole grains or 100% whole wheat. And that way, the goal is to get at least half of your grains as whole grains. And it's great to see a lot of these kid products, more and more of them are having whole grain options. And then with milk, after age 2, we encourage, using low-fat milk or fat-free milk. And then we want to experiment with fun spices. And I know this can be hard with kids. My kids don't like it when things get too spicy. And so we have to definitely tailor, the amount of spices for them. But it's fun to experiment with different spices and giving them different flavors to try. And also taking time to eat. I think that it's hard at night. We're busy and we've got a lot of things to do. We're getting home from work. But if we can take the time to sit down, turn off the TV, turn off any distractions, and to eat slowly and to savor our food and to talk. And it could be such a great time to sit down and talk with our kids. There's been multiple studies showing that having family meal times 2 or 3 times a week is protected against eating disorders, depression, a whole number of mental health issues. So if we can have those family meals, and I like to encourage at least 3 times a week, and that's all you have to do, 3 times a week to get those protected mental health benefits, to sit down and to talk to our kids. I like to encourage intuitive eating as we're eating family meals. So we're sitting down and we're talking about, like, how hungry are we? And we're eating our food and doing mindful eating. We're chewing and we're talking about the tastes and flavors and textures, and to be mindful as we're eating. And then when we're done, we're being done with our food. And this could be a great time to teach kids to really tune in and listen to what their body's telling them. And so if they say, I'm done, I'm full, rather than say, no, finish your plate, what I like to do is say, okay, like, if you're full, then let's be done with dinner. And If they have only eaten a small amount of their plate and I'm concerned that they didn't get enough to eat, I will wrap that plate up and put it in the fridge. And if they find that they're hungry later, that dinner is still there. But I try not to push kids to eat past where they say they're feeling full, because I really want to honor that intuitive eating of only eating when they're hungry and eating mindfully and stopping when they're full. They call it intuitive eating because kids are born doing this, and somehow throughout our life we train that out of kids because we, and we're all, I'm guilty of doing this as well, but like trying to get them to finish their plate or finish their meal. No, just finish that. And over time we lose that intuitive sense. And so one thing that I do with my adult clients and also with kids is I try to teach them how to relearn intuitive eating. Only eating when you're hungry, checking in with those hunger cues, eating slowly and mindfully, and stopping eating when we're full. And that's a really hard thing to learn because we've trained that out of ourselves. They say it's intuitive, but it doesn't feel intuitive when you first start doing it. So if your kids are naturally doing this, it can be frustrating sometimes because you just want them to eat their meals. But if you can honor that as much as possible, I think that's a good idea. Let's see, some more questions. Homemade smoothies with coconut are actually getting my kids to eat individual foods in the smoothie. That's a good idea. Like when we put things in a smoothie and they're watching us put things in, my kids love smoothies and they let me put all kinds of things in there that they might not otherwise eat. They might actually want to eat some of those foods and try them. Like, oh, like we're putting spinach in the smoothie. Well, maybe I want to try that spinach. Or like, oh, I didn't like berries, but I'm seeing it and it tastes good in the smoothies. Let's try that. We'll talk about breakfast with kids in a minute. I had one comment. My daughter would eat only once a day if we went off her intuition. And that is true. And as a parent, you know your kids and have to work off of your kids. I have other kids who would eat all day long if we let them go off of their intuition. And so it might take some give or take and planning. And so if you have a child that doesn't ever feel hungry, maybe they have medications, maybe they have other things that make it hard to listen to their hunger and fullness cues, then it makes sense to have a schedule of eating for them. So it's like we're eating 3 meals a day and 2 or 3 snacks, and they need to eat certain portions throughout the day. And I'm hoping as they get older that they can learn to cue into that intuition. But a lot of kids, I have a lot of teenagers that I work with that are underweight. I mean, if we just listen to their intuition, they would stay underweight. And so we have to push them a little bit, and that almost goes against what I'm teaching, but also we have to help them to learn to eat appropriate amounts of food, and that a lot of times feels like pushing them to eat a little bit past fullness. I love that. One person, Deanne, said, some of my favorite memories are having dinner with my family, and I agree. I feel the same way. I loved family dinners. The other thing I like to encourage is not to use family dinners as a time to lecture or talk about heavy things. If we could try to keep it light, I think we remember, I'm sure as adults, we remember the family meals where it was light and happy and we got to know our family. And we want to, if you're going to have a lecture or discipline your kids, try not to do it around family meal times, because we want food to be a soothing, pleasurable experience and not have it be associated with discipline. Let's see, where were we? So we talked about smoothies. Another thing I like to encourage is having kid-sized plates. I find that it's less overwhelming for the kids to have their kid-sized plates and put appropriate portions for them, and know that they can always, and they need to know that they could always ask for more if they're still hungry, but put appropriate portions for them, because I find that kids get really overwhelmed if you put a big plate of food on their plate. And some of them might like that, and maybe it's a food that they really enjoy, and that's different. But if you're trying a new food, start with a little portion and say, you know what, I just want you to try a bite of it. And if you don't like it, then you don't need to eat anymore, but just try a bite. At my house, we have a 1-bite policy. They don't have to eat any more than a bite, but they have to try at least a bite of every food that I give to them. And then beyond that, I let them, try to eat as intuitively as we can. And I think it's great to encourage trying new foods. And part of that is having that behavior ourselves. And so as we try new foods, we might be surprised with what we like, and encouraging kids to try new foods, I think, is a great way. It's a great way to experiment. We're like, let's try this new food. What do you think about the texture? Let's smell it. What does it taste like? How does that feel going down your throat? How does it make your tummy feel? And that can be a fun way to explore new foods. So I love to talk about the division of responsibility, and that's coined by Ellen Satter. And the division of responsibility is, as a parent, we decide when, what, and where we eat. So we decide when we're eating, what time we're eating, what we're eating. We're the ones who create the menus and buy the food. And when, what, and where are we going to eat? And the kids' division of responsibility is how much they're going to eat. And so we can, try to create all of these behaviors and getting the food and making sure there's a pleasant place to eat and having a pleasant atmosphere. But in the end, we leave it up to the kids how much to eat. And I know that goes a little bit against what I just said about pushing some kids a little bit past if they're underweight or if they're needing to power pack. But for the majority of kids, we're going to let them decide how much to eat. And that takes the food fight out of these meals. It's like, if you don't want to eat any more than that, great. I'm going to stick this in the fridge. And if you get hungry later, it's there. I don't use this as a license of, don't eat any of dinner and you can go and have a big bowl of goldfish after. Like, the kitchen is closed. If they want to go back and have their dinner later, then they're welcome to. But it's not a license to eat snacks after dinner or before dinner. Let's see, I had a question. A child eats a lot. They don't want to say that he can't have more, but it causes problems later. If let's say that you have a child, and I have 2 big eaters, and so they eat a big portion of their main meal, and they're like, "Mom, I'm still hungry." Well, then if they want to have extras, I try to encourage having extra fruits and vegetables, because the fruits and vegetables have a lot of fiber and a lot of bulk. And so it won't take very many carrots or broccoli before they're feeling full. And maybe they just need to feel that bulk. They need to feel that stretch in their stomach. And so if we can do that with fruits and vegetables, I find that keeps that caloric intake lower if they've already eaten, big portions of their main meal. I also try to encourage a little bit of water intake, because maybe they're just thirsty and dehydrated, and that can make hunger cues. You might feel hungry, but you're actually just thirsty. And so making sure that this child is drinking fluids, and if they're still hungry, then encourage fruits and vegetables. So let's talk about how to add more vegetables, because I think this is a really common concern with almost every parent. It can be difficult to cook fruits and vegetables, or to cook vegetables. What I encourage is get comfortable with frozen veggies. Frozen veggies are just as healthy as fresh ones. Oftentimes they're picked at the peak of freshness, and they're flash frozen. And a lot of times they have more nutrients than the fresh versions. But whenever you can, if you can get farmer's market, fresh fruits and vegetables, awesome. But when it makes sense, I think it's helpful to have frozen veggies in the freezer and ready to go, because these can be, steamed in the microwave and ready to throw in with a meal. I love frozen veggies for stir fries and throwing them into soups and salads. And they can be a really easy side dish with some seasoning and some butter. Buy everything at once and get things prepackaged and cut up for the week. And so I always encourage my clients, if you're busy and you don't have time to cut up veggies, you don't get extra points for cutting up your own veggies. You can go to the grocery store and get them pre-cut up and ready to go. I get pre-cut up veggies and just dump them into my veggie tray. When I can, I'll get the other veggies and I'll cut them up, because that's less expensive. But if it's a busy week, it's okay to get things pre-cut up. So have some bell peppers, carrots, broccolis, and put it in your veggie tray, and then that's ready to have on a salad or have it with hummus for a snack. Once again, we're trying to encourage the rainbow. You might find that some kids will only eat certain colors, and so having that discussion with them about how these different colors have different effects on our body. So, you know, the reds are helpful with our eyes. The oranges help us to have a strong immune system, and having all of these different colors, how they have different benefits in the body. And so we're trying to encourage a wide variety of colors. I also, you know, like to tell parents that it's okay to have canned tomatoes and beans and mushrooms. These are easy to use, and it's okay to have those, especially right now, to make sure that we've got some of these options in our pantry. If we can, try to grab the ones with no added salt, or that it says low sodium. And then I find that along with smoothies, kids love to have soup. And so to find some fun soups that they like to eat and have those on hand. For my kids, they love butternut squash and tomato soup, and so I make sure that I have those ready to go in the pantry, so that on a busy night we've got a soup on hand, and they're packed with veggies. When you do eat out, try to encourage some veggies even when you eat out. I find that most places have a side salad or a veggie side that you can get, and to encourage that even when we are eating out. Another thing I like to encourage is trying to buy in season when possible. And so it can be such a fun activity to take kids to the farmer's market to learn more about veggies, and talk about how the veggies at the farmer's market are grown locally and that they're sustainable and they're very nutritious. And so that can be a great activity to take kids on. And then it could also be fun. It's almost grilling season. I've actually used the grill a couple of times. I'm pretty excited that it's that season. But using the grill to put fruits and vegetables on kebabs, and using the grill to cook those fruits and veggies. I also like to encourage, you know, take a casserole recipe that you're used to using and throw some frozen veggies in there. It's amazing. You can throw veggies into a casserole, and that can really change the dynamics of that meal. And so where your kids might not eat vegetables by themselves, maybe they will eat it in a casserole mixed into some different dishes. And then to get creative with salads, oftentimes we kind of get in these salad ruts where we'll have the same salads, but try using different salads, different flavors, different seasonings, different dressings, and having different kinds of salad to keep things interesting with our kids. Stir fries are another big one. We love to do stir fries at our house just because it's super easy. So with the grain, we will either do rice or quinoa or couscous, and then we do. I like to do 1/3 protein and 2/3 vegetables when I create a salad, or not a salad, a stir fry. So think if you use 1 pound of ground beef, then you're going to use 2 pounds of vegetables when you create a stir fry. It's also fun to add veggies to sandwiches and veggies to an omelet. And so instead of having just eggs, let's dice up some zucchini and throw the zucchini in there. Instead of just having a turkey sandwich, let's throw some sprouts or some lettuce, tomatoes, avocados in that sandwich. In terms of vegetables, I like to encourage that we keep visible reminders. So put a fun bowl in your kitchen where everyone can reach them and eat them when they're hungry, and fill them full of veggies fruits that they have access to. I know right now they're having cuties on sale, and so I have a big bowl of cuties. I swear my little guy ate 10 cuties yesterday, but I would rather him eat a cutie when he's hungry than other snacks. And so having those kind of in their line of sight reminds them that we want to be eating fruits and vegetables. Think about taste. So trying to buy fruits in season, those are less expensive, and I think they taste better when you get them in season. Think about variety. I think it's a good idea to have fresh fruits around, but also, you know, relying on dried, frozen, and canned. And when we do that, getting canned in water or 100% juice to keep things convenient. Applesauce and the squeezy pouches, having canned fruits and vegetables can be really helpful. And think about the fiber of things. And so as much as possible, I try not to encourage a lot of fruit juice drinking. I try to get them to eat the entire fruit, just because the fruit's going to have more fiber. It's going to have more of an effect on fullness. And it's also going to affect our blood sugar differently than just having juice. Like kids can suck down a lot of juice and get a lot of calories and sugar versus if you gave them that apple or the orange, they're going to feel a lot fuller and actually eat less of that. I do use some juice when I make homemade sports drinks, but I dilute that juice down and I add electrolytes to it. And there is a place for juice, obviously, but as much as possible, I try to encourage eating the whole fruit rather than the juice. I think with any of these behaviors, we have to model good behaviors ourselves. And so if our kids see us eating fruit, if our kids see us eating vegetables, then I think they're more likely to do that. I had a question earlier about breakfast. So I try to think of breakfast in the same way where I try to have a grain and a fruit and a milk. When I can, I feel like I get bonus points for throwing a veggie in there. So smoothies can be really helpful. You could use a dairy or a dairy substitute and frozen veggies, and you can use like frozen spinach or kale and then pick a fruit. I like to use frozen berries. And then from there you can add some healthy fats. I have a seed mix with flax and some other seeds in there, so I'll throw that in there. And so you're getting a fruit, a vegetable, and then for a protein, I could either count the dairy as a protein, or if I want to add a little extra, I always have some vanilla protein powder to add for that extra protein with that. That can be a really easy breakfast for kids as we're running out the door. My kids will oftentimes drink it in the car as we're, driving to school. Another thing is even if it's a quick thing, if you can have at least a protein and a carbohydrate, and so that might be peanut butter toast. I also keep a little station at my house where I have some pre-packed things that are really easy to grab. So if it's a busy morning, they might have an applesauce squeezy for their fruit, and they might get a granola bar that has some protein and some carbohydrates in it. And sometimes that's the best we can do. And we have a container of milk, and we'll drink that and eat that and go. Mornings can be a really busy time. And so if you have time to make, eggs with some zucchini in it, great. But if you are running out the door, just try to make sure that if you have these things planned out and in your kitchen, then it's easier to grab and go. And so having those fruits and the grains and protein options available, I find takes a lot of stress out from the mornings, because it's already stressful enough without it making, without the added stress of trying to think about what to have for breakfast. So other kid-friendly fruit and vegetable ideas, we've talked a lot about smoothies. I like to have a wide variety of frozen fruits in the fridge so that it's easy to do a smoothie. I find that my kids love to dip foods in. They love to have dip. And so we go through a lot of ranch, and people often ask, like, well, is that okay for them to be eating ranch? I'm like, I think it's okay for them to eat ranch if that gets them to eat their veggies. My kids eat a lot of veggies, and they eat ranch with that, or they eat hummus, but they love to dip veggies into something. And so I try to have some kind of dip with that. They love to have fruit with I mix Greek yogurt, whole fat Greek yogurt with peanut butter and maybe a little bit of honey, and that makes a great dip for fruit. And there's a lot of different dip options for fruits and vegetables, but they love that. Other fun options that we could do right now while we're at home is caterpillar kebabs. And so we take a kebab stick, and we might either do a vegetable kebab and throw that on the grill, or we do a fruit kebab and have them push all the individual fruits along that kebab stick, and then we snack on that. Easy things to do at home. We do a personalized pizza quite often, and what I do is I take a pita bread, and we'll do tomato sauce and cheese, and then I let everyone make their own individual pizzas, and they might put some veggies and some protein on there. Bugs on a log is another fun one. So taking celery and putting peanut butter and maybe some raisins and having that as a snack. We also do homemade trail mix, where they can pick their own dried fruits and nuts and make their own trail mix. And then letting kids be in charge. Ask them like what new veggie or fruit that they want to try, or letting them arrange their fruits or veggies for dinner and presenting that to the family. It can be really fun to say, here are the fruits that we're going to have. Can you put it all on a plate and you bring it out to us? And I think that can be a really fun way for kids to get involved. And I once again, like the more that we're letting them be involved, I think the more ownership that they have, and then they're more likely to try these foods. So back to the family meals. Once again, we just want to make sure that we're having minimal distractions. As hard as this is, and I'm guilty of this, like no cell phones at the table, get things away and turn off the TV, turn off, maybe we might have have a little bit of music on for a pleasant background, but it's low volume and it doesn't drown out conversations. And we are really the ones who, set the table or set the tone for how meals are going to be. And so if I've had a bad day at work, or I'm tired and exhausted, I try to take a minute after I've cooked dinner, but before we eat, to just get centered for having meals so that I can try to be as pleasant as possible for my kids, and so we can have a pleasant meal. And trying to encourage these appropriate table manners for our kids, and even young kids can start to learn table manners that progress as they get older. Lastly, I just want to encourage that we don't pressure or force our kids to eat anything. I think even when we try to encourage healthy foods, if they feel pressured or forced a lot, then I see kids, rebound or regress in other ways. I will see them, refuse to eat foods kids will dig in their feet. So if we push too hard, then they will push back. And so having these realistic expectations for my house, it's you try one bite. And if you don't like it, it puts a lot of pressure off them. It's like, you don't have to like it. You just have to try a bite of it. And that's it. We've been doing that for a long time. And so that's an expectation. If that's a new expectation at your house, you might have a little bit of pushback at the beginning, but over time your kids will just know, like, we just have to try one bite of everything and we don't have to like it. Sometimes I try foods I don't like, and I just have these conversations with my kids. You don't have to like everything that I cook, but you do have to try a bite of it, and you do have to be appreciative and not be rude about it. So if you don't like something, then we talk about an appropriate way of communicating, hey, I didn't really like that, rather than being rude about it. But just trying to have these conversations and teaching them that they are their own little individuals and they don't have to like everything, but we do have to at least try everything. And if let's say it's a big, I've made a main dish that they don't like, well then if they don't like that, I try to encourage that they help pick a substitute. And I am a big proponent of not being a line cook. I do not make multiple meals for my family. I will make one meal that we all eat, and I try to tailor that for what I know my kids will like. But I do not make multiple meals and items for our family. And so if they don't like something, then they can eat the other side dishes, and the next meal will come around when the next meal comes around. And so that kind of encourages them, like, you get what you get. This is the meal that we're having, and this is what we're eating. And if you don't like that, then, you can wait till the next meal. And at a certain point, we close up the kitchen. I'm like, kitchen's closed. And so we need to make sure that we're getting enough for dinner. And then after that, the kitchen's closed. Breakfast will be at 8 o'clock the next morning or 7 o'clock the next morning. I do have some families that I work with that have sensory issues with their kids, or they have, a lot of picky eating going on. And what I encourage these families to do is have a list of, like, these are the list of protein options. These are the list of veggies and fruits and dairy and fats, and letting the kids pick, like, I'm going to have one of these, one of these, one of these, one of these. And if they're older, then they can make their own foods, but it encourages them to take some ownership of what they're eating. I love that someone just said in their family, they call those no thank you bites in our family. Let's see. I feel like I've done the try bite and my daughter's willing to try, and now doesn't want to try and doesn't like anything. It's so frustrating. And this is so true. I think kids go through jags, and that's a normal thing. I want to make sure that we all are on the same page with that. It is normal for kids, like, they loved something and then all of a sudden they hate something, and then a little longer they love it again. And so I think that's normal for kids to go through these jags where they only like certain foods, or they love something and then they don't love it and then they love it again. And so whatever they will eat, I try to power pack and make that as nutritious as possible. But know that, like, these kids, as long as we're doing our best and making sure that they're getting as many well-rounded meals as we can, like they're gonna be okay. If your kid is in a really big food jag or they only eat in certain meals, we try to encourage the one bite. But if you're worried about their nutrition, then make sure that they're getting a good multivitamin, and it's going to be okay. If you're really worried about your child and that they're not meeting their nutrition needs, and that's where, working with a dietitian like myself, I can help strategize and encourage other meals and snacks with the children or with you. So I had a comment, maybe it's a sensory issue, but I love the idea of giving them different options, talking about those sensory things, just having an open conversation, and that depends on how old the child is, but talking about like, if you don't like it this way, then let's try making it this way. Maybe they don't like it mushed or they don't like things touching, and trying to accommodate for that as much as possible. But in the end, I think we all have to take care of ourselves too and make sure that we're taking care of our mental health, and to try to, have the kids help out as much as possible and take ownership over that. So I hope that gave you guys a lot of ideas on kind of what we're encouraging in terms of USDA food patterns, how to pattern meals and snacks. Again, we're trying to encourage 3 meals and 2 or 3 snacks a day. We talked about a lot of different ideas for weeknight dinners and snacks, and how to add fruits and vegetables. Hopefully that is helpful for you all. If you guys have any other questions, I want to make sure that I answer those, but hopefully we've been going through all of those as we've been going along. Or my hair is doing something funny. You guys can feel free, if you have questions that come up after, to message me at Olive Nutrition or emailing me. My email address is marysa@allofnutrition.com. Feel free to email me, and I'll try to get back to all of your questions. But I hope this has been helpful for you guys. And I just want to encourage, none of us are perfect, and meal times are, I think they're stressful for everyone. They're stressful for me, and this is kind of what I do for a living. So it's okay if you find that it's stressful, especially if you're trying to change things and do something different for your kids. And so to give yourself some grace. We don't expect perfection from any of our clients, and I don't expect perfection from myself. I think all we can do is the best we can do, especially with family meals. Not all of them are going to go perfect. I would love to say all of my family meals were peaceful and calm, and there was music playing in the background, and they're balanced, but they don't always turn out that way. And that's where we need to give ourselves some grace, that it's okay not to be perfect, but we're doing the best that we can. And kids aren't going to die if they don't get all of their nutrition every day, but we're talking about long-term patterns. And so just trying to encourage, increasing fruits and vegetables, getting their whole grains, meeting their proteins. And over the lifetime, that's where that makes a difference. And so try not to get too stressed about the nitty-gritty details, but we're just trying to encourage these long-term health behaviors. And so let me know if you guys have any questions. And thank you again for joining us. And thank you for the JCC for posting this. Okay, bye everyone. Thank you.